Hello and welcome to the Kentucky Today podcast. Kentucky Today is the news outlet of the Kentucky Baptist Convention. I'm Lawrence Smith, the editor of Kentucky Today, and joining me as usual, Mark Maynard, the managing editor, and Chip Hutchison, our content editor, all for Kentucky Today. We're going to talk about several of the stories that ran on Kentucky Today this past week. And Mark, I want to start with you. You did a story on a tremendous response to a recent disaster relief training held in Princeton, Kentucky.
Yes, Southside Baptist Church in Princeton held it, and there were 280 participants. And what was even more remarkable, I thought, was 170 new volunteers. And that's just going to add to the army that Ron Crow has built there with the Kentucky Disaster Relief. And you know, it's not unusual to have a good turnout for a training session after they've been on a deployment just right before that. This has happened, you know, several times. But I just thought it was big numbers. He was so encouraged. He even had somebody who came from Alaska and got the training. So I don't know if they're taking it back to Alaska or what they may have learned, but he was talking about that. And I thought the other thing that was kind of unique, the next, I guess it was Monday this week, he had a training at Boyce in one of the classes where he trained 12 college students. And they love getting those college students because they have the strong backs and they can really help them on these trainings. And, you know, we've had several things about the Campbellsville students who have come and lended a hand. And, you know, the connection that all those people have with these senior adults is great. I guess it's like working with your granddad, maybe your in-shape granddad, because I tell you what, some of these disaster relief guys, I wouldn't want to try to work with them. I would like to work with them. I wouldn't try to outwork them, that's for sure, because they really get after it.
And the thing about that Princeton training, I think you said 60% of those people were new volunteers?
That's correct. 60% were, you know, getting their toes wet, so to speak. And the training, you know, it's not a joke. This training is critical. They teach you how to everybody thinks they know how to use a chainsaw, but they teach all the safety parts of it. They don't want anybody taking a chance to get hurt. And you don't go on disaster relief deployments without the training certificates that you get from going to these training sessions. And they've made that abundantly clear. It's not just everybody come and help. I mean, that's great that a lot of people still do that and still come and try to help, but you're learning all kinds of secrets and skills and knowing how to do things. And that's vitally important. It's not just for your safety, it's for the guy you're working with, maybe, you know, and they have every category covered. You know, if you're wanting to be a chaplain or if you're wanting to work in the kitchen or whatever job, and there's many with disaster relief, whatever job they have, there's a training available for that.
Chip, you're the Prince of Princeton, so to speak, having published a newspaper there for many years. So I guess you're not really surprised at that kind of turnout in a relatively small town.
Right. I'm not. Princeton, a town of approximately 6,300, county of just over 13,000. Southside's a great place to hold an event. That was our home church. I got a text from the pastor there, Kyle Knopfsinger, who could not have been more complimentary of the work that DR did in setting up that training. He said, I came over here wondering what I needed to do. He said there wasn't anything to do because they already had everything taken care of. So professional, so efficient in all that they do. And that is that whole area in Western Kentucky is a great area for people wanting to help. We have strong Kentucky Baptist churches in that region. So, yes, I'm not surprised at all. I'm so thankful they had a good turnout and were able to get a number of new people involved in disaster relief work.
Now, Chip, you did a story on a different kind of disaster relief, how a small church was able to bless a sister church both financially and spiritually.
Yes, Hopewell Baptist Church in Harrodsburg, Kentucky. They run about 150 on a Sunday morning in their worship service, and they contributed $10,000 to help a church in flood-prone area, a church that had about 4 feet of water, I think, in the basement. And what's so interesting about that story, instead of just mailing a check, they went, there were 7 people, the pastor and 6 others, and they drove more than 3 hours. I think it's about a 3-hour and 20-minute drive to the hazard area to give that check. And not only did they give the money, and the church did not know, it was Faith Baptist of Myra, they did not know that it was going to be that kind of money. And so not only did they give him that big check, but they gathered around, they prayed for them, prayed for their efforts. And as I spoke to the pastor of Harrisburg, there in Harrisburg, he talked about Hopewell. He talked about the blessing it was to them to be able to minister to those people who were hurting from the flood, and he could see the encouragement that it provided to them. Not the first time this church has done that. 3 years ago, they went to Fleming Baptist Church and did the same thing, and not only gave the church a check for $10,000, Pastor Brother Wesley, Doug Wesley, had a friend in South Carolina. They matched it. They gave the church $10,000. And then they also just took up a collection among the men that went on the trip, and they blessed the pastor there at Fleming Baptist Church with money just to encourage him. So it's really a great encouragement it bears out the biblical truth that it is more blessed to give than to receive.
Of course, most of the Kentucky Baptist churches are small churches, so it tells you the impact a small church can have, and also the benefit of cooperation, working together.
Yes, and I think that's what's so special. Attention nationally is usually drawn to the mega churches, and we know that that's not indicative of the typical Kentucky Baptist church. 40% or more have a bivocational pastor, and it is evidence that you might be small in number, but you can be large in your giving, and you can be large in the impact that you make upon people who are hurting, and you want to help them to fulfill their mission of evangelizing their community, of sharing the good news of Jesus Christ with people who have, in many cases, lost everything that they have.
Stay with you for a minute, Chip, on another story. Talk about the piece you did on the Kentucky Baptist Convention's partnership with the International Mission Board in Chile.
Yes, very interesting. Kentucky Baptists are working with IMB and churches in Chile to help those churches in a partnership. And it's been very interesting. So March 13th through 20th, we had a 19-person delegation that went from Kentucky on a vision tour is what they call it. But they got to work with churches in Chile. Chile is a very unreached area. They were in the Santiago, Chile area. Santiago is a city of 8 million people. And they have some Baptist churches, they just don't have enough to reach 8 million people. And so the delegation, I've spoken to 2 of their people on that trip, and they talked about how they were so encouraged by seeing the work that these churches in Chile are doing in evangelizing and spreading the gospel, but ministering to people who are homeless, people who are coming out of drug rehab. They were overwhelmed, I believe is the correct word, with how those churches were ministering with having so few resources. So the goal is here a twofold purpose. One, to help those churches and develop partnerships where Kentucky Baptists can go to Chile and help, whether it is in door-to-door evangelism, whether it is in building a building, whether it is to helping with any of these ministries. They have in Chile, there's a great opportunity to go into schools and tell people about the Lord there, which does not exist in a lot of places. And then also the partnership is it's not just that we go, but it's that they come. They want to have pastors from Chile who can come back to Kentucky and to be an encouragement, to spread the word about how the Lord is working there. And it is, from what I've gathered as I talk to folks, a true partnership. It's just not taking a trip down there and being done with it. It is a long-term partnership, at least a 3-year commitment to help those churches, and then for us to be a blessing for them and them to be a blessing to us.
Well, the motto of the KBC is created by churches for churches to spread the gospel to Kentucky and the world. So that's what we're about, reaching Kentucky and the world for Christ. Well, I had a chance to talk with Al Mohler, the president of the Southern Baptist Theological Seminary, about his new book called Prophet, Priest, and King, The Three Offices of Christ. And I got an interesting insight into kind of how he thinks, because I asked him first question, why did he write this book? And he gave me little ways talk about the way he thinks. He says he tries to ask himself the question, what are churches not talking about that they should be talking about? And in this case, what he said was they're not talking about the three offices of Christ enough: pastor, priest, and king. So that was fascinating. And we talked about why each one individually is important, and at the same time, how we should not separate them. He said each is important to understand Christ, but also it's important to consider all of those three offices collectively to fully understand what the Lord has done for those who place their faith in him. So it's a fascinating conversation. You can read all about that right now on KentuckyToday.com. It's a deeply theological book, but it's also very readable. Prophet, Priest, and King, The Three Offices of Christ, and it's coming out on April 1st. All right. I encourage you to pick up that book and also to read more about it on our website. All right, let's talk politics and policy, public policy for a moment. Our Frankfurt reporter, Tom Latek, and you, Mark, have done stories on the number of bills that have been vetoed by Governor Andy Beshear. He signed a lot of them, but he's vetoed about 20 or so far. I want to focus on a couple of them, in particularly important to Kentucky Baptists. Mark, you did a story on his veto of a bill called House Bill 90, which seeks to clarify Kentucky's abortion ban, laying out what is and is not an abortion. So what did the governor say, and what's the reaction been, Mark?
Yeah, the governor, of course, he vetoed that bill. He felt like it added even more confusion and to what doctors had to do. In other words, when they face situations, do they have to look back at this list of things that the bill talks about? And you can't predict emergencies, and that's kind of his reasoning behind it as to why he vetoed that. He felt like it didn't clarify what would be best for the doctor as he's treating the pregnant woman, whether or not what he can legally do. And I think that's why he vetoed it. That's what he said in his veto message. But with having a supermajority, our elected lawmakers can actually override any veto the governor gives on Thursday and Friday. They have 2 days to take care of that. And we have supermajorities. It would be, if they want it to go through, it's going through, and it becomes law at that point, no matter that he vetoed it or what.
And of course, critics are saying, Mark, that he's simply kind of doing the bidding of Planned Parenthood and other pro-abortion advocates.
Yes. Yeah, that's kind of what people feel like, that he's just and Planned Parenthood certainly encouraged him to veto this bill, and he's made no claims that he wasn't somebody who supports. He was a pro-abortion person. He's a pro-abortion governor. I don't think there's anything about that that's even trying to be hidden by him, really.
Well, it was a big part of his reelection campaign, obviously.
Yeah, right. And he is seen as a Democratic candidate for the White House in 2028 as well, and he's following the advice of abortion rights supporters, and they also urged him to reject this measure. And I think that's another big reason as to why he did it.
The governor also vetoed House Bill 495. That's a bill that protects conversion therapy, and he vetoed it while attending a dinner for the Fairness Campaign. The Fairness Campaign is as people know across the state, a pro-LGBTQ organization, and he vetoed that while attending one of their dinners. Beshear calls conversion therapy torture, and had previously signed an executive order banning conversion therapy, but Beshear's order went so far as to ban any attempt to help someone or counsel someone confused about their sexual identity. So, go ahead, Mark. I'm sorry.
Yeah, he would eliminate a pastor counseling somebody about it, even, or any kind of
a Christian counselor.
Yes, a Christian counselor, right? A pastor, a Christian counselor, anything like that. It would be illegal for them to say anything to them about this and about how they're feeling and about, is this the way you want to go? Is this, what's going on in your life? And that's not right to be able to do that. People need to have choices. They need to have some sense, I think, in some of these cases. And, he's not allowing that to happen. And he calls it torture. And, maybe, 75 years ago, if they, shock treatment and all that kind of stuff, that was pretty outrageous. But I don't think you can connect that to what it is now. They still call it the same thing is the thing.
Yeah, that's a good point, Mark. I mean, there have been some abuses that have been labeled with the moniker conversion therapy that have been done in the name of conversion therapy. We're not talking about that. All of us could condemn those abuses that you mentioned, but Chip, having been a pastor and still filling in as a pastor, you would agree that this is something that pastors and Christian counselors should be free to discuss with someone who may be struggling with this.
I just find it just beyond belief almost that to counsel a person who's going through an identity crisis would be illegal. We talk about religious freedom. A person of faith must have the freedom to express their faith and their biblical convictions. And we would, as Christians, as followers of the Lord Jesus Christ, we would be neglecting our duty not to condemn somebody, but to try to help them in the crisis that they're going through. And so it just boggles my mind that there could be any hint that would be forbidden by law, because we are to, the Bible is clear, Jesus was clear, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, strength, mind, and body, and your neighbors yourself. We want to love your neighbor. The governor may talk about loving your neighbor. Well, loving your neighbor involves trying to help them in their time of crisis with scriptural, biblical advice that will help them through the rest of their life. And we need to have that we have that responsibility. We need to have the legal authority to carry that out.
Now, in fairness, I think the governor has said it would not apply necessarily to pastors and ministers, but there are a lot of Christian counselors, some connected to churches, some not, who might be restricted from being able to discuss the biblical view of sexuality with someone who is struggling with this. So we'll see. HB 495, this bill also banned taxpayer dollars from being used to pay for hormones or surgery for transgender adults. So as Mark said, lawmakers will have the opportunity coming up in the next couple of days, we're recording this on Wednesday afternoon, to override those votes, but they do reveal the governor's progressive views on some issues like this. All right, let's begin or end with March Madness. we ended last week. My team, U of L, is out, but I think both of you UK fans would agree that Coach Pat Kelsey has really turned this program around. You are Mr. UK, Chip, so I think you'd agree that U of L, it's good to have a strong U of L program.
Well, it is, and especially for Louisville, as we now residents of Louisville. My friends in Princeton cautioned me not to be betrayed and fall into being a U of L fan. I'm not a U of L fan.
I'm working on you.
But
I'm working on you.
I know you are, but I think you're doomed to failure there. But I am a Pat Kelsey fan. You know, I was a Kenny Payne fan. I'm sorry he did not do well here. It's good to have strong basketball programs in your state, regardless of where the school is. I certainly want UK to win every game that they play, but I'm sorry that Louisville did not advance further. Pat Kelsey, from what I can tell, is a committed Christian. I'm thankful for the way he's turned that program around. As long as Kentucky can win when they play each other, I'm very happy.
Well, UK is still dancing. I think they play Tennessee next for the third time this year in Indianapolis. Mark, what do you think?
Well, I think 3 times is tough to beat a team, but I'm not so sure. I don't like being the team that's won twice. They know they can do it. They've done it before. They did it when people were injured, and they still have, of course, Jackson Robinson out. But the crowd's going to be there. It's going to be exciting. They kind of relish this underdog role. Kentucky's seldom in the underdog role, and I thought they played real relaxed against Illinois, and they were the underdog in that game. So even though they were the 3 seed and Illinois was the 6 seed, it's going to be a good game. Both those teams know each other so well. And, both times Tennessee has played Kentucky, they haven't shot well. And I guess we're hoping that had something to do with their defense. We'll see. I don't know if that's the case or not, but we'll find out.
And we should mention that our UK reporter, our sports guy, Keith Taylor, did a story on one of the players named Trenton Noah, who gave thanks to God for his team's success. So I think we're seeing that more and more across sports, more athletes openly expressing their faith in Jesus.
Yeah, Trent seems to be a real go-to Christian kind of guy. He really does. I know from a story that Keith wrote earlier in the season, preseason, I think, actually. He talked about his faith and all that. And you do hear that a lot from players and after they win a big game or whatever. But I like how he's playing. Trent's, he's a freshman who's just starting to play a lot now and contribute. He had a big 3-pointer against Troy in that game, and he played well in the first half against Illinois. So he's contributing. I know, being where he's from, which is Harlan, very close to Tennessee, closer to Tennessee than he is UK as far as, actual distance. And there's a lot of Tennessee fans in Harlan. So I'm sure he would like to bring one home for UK if he can help in any way. And it seems like he's that kind of player.
I should mention, for those who may be watching this as opposed to listening, I think we're having trouble with Mark's camera, so you may not be able to see him, but you can hear him. So I just wanted to acknowledge that we're having difficulty with Mark's camera, but we can still hear his dulcet tones. We have to acknowledge as well that for the first time ever, it's all Power 5 conferences in the finals, the Sweet 16. No mid-majors, no Cinderellas in the ball anymore. Chip, what about that?
Well, it's I think because I think Lawrence, Mark, and I have always have talked recently about the impact of name, image, and likeness, NIL, plus the transfer portal. You see these major colleges that look into the mid-majors and they see players who can play at the top level, and they've recruited them away, and the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. And so I think you're seeing those players who are underestimated coming out of high school. Their talent is realized, and they transferred to one of these power conference teams. That's unfortunate in some ways, but we're seeing now 13 out of the last 17 national champions have been number one seeds. And I think you're going to see that continue. I wish Kentucky could break that streak this year. But, you're seeing the power conferences are really dominating the play. We've seen fewer upsets this year than any year I can recall. We've still got all four of the number one seeds are still alive going into the Sweet 16. So we probably still have an upset or two coming, but I think they're going to be few and far between. But certainly NIL and the transfer portal has changed college basketball.
And Mark, I don't think we necessarily have a problem with players being paid, but it seems like it's the wild, wild west right now. There needs to be some structure to this. Would you agree? Mark, I think you're on mute. Can you unmute yourself and respond to that question? I hope you can still.
Yeah,
there
we go.
Now I can hear you.
I'm having all kinds of problems here. I think Congress will eventually get a hold of this thing and make some decisions, which I don't know if it will be good or bad. But you're absolutely right. Yeah. Right now it's just an awful time, I think, in college basketball. And you know who I really feel sorry for are these freshmen high school kids right now who, normally these teams will be looking at and to bring on. But, even Rick Pitino said, I'm through with freshmen. I'm not doing freshmen anymore. I'm just going straight to the transfer portal and getting what I need. And I think that's probably the MO for a lot of teams, that's what they're going to do. That's the first thing you're going to do. If you can't get that, then you'll take those freshmen along. But they're getting left out right now. And I don't know when that catches up with you. Eventually it will. We'll see. But, the money is just crazy. I know Xavier coach Sean Miller went to Texas, and Texas has, I think it was $15 million in NIL money. Xavier has $1 million. Texas starting five in basketball are being paid $2 million. They're starting five. And that's double what Xavier's athletic NIL budget is. So, when you get in those situations, it's the rich getting richer for sure. Yeah. And, that's what we don't want. I don't think it's good for college basketball. You have to play the game. A lot of coaches have said, I'm not doing it. I'm not playing it. I'm not going to do that. I'll step out first. And I guess you step out if that's the case, because that's just how the game's going to be played, at least for the next few years, I think, till lawmakers step in and make a decision or whatever. But now I've heard like they're going to try to put a limit on $22 million, that the school actually makes the payments, though. Like individuals don't make the payments, the school has to make the payment. But what schools can afford $22 million just for athletics? I don't know. There's has to be something has to happen, and it will. I can't imagine this lasting more than 3 or 4 years.
You mentioned Xavier. Guess who's going to be the new coach at Xavier? You may have seen this. Richard Pitino, Rick's son. So there'll be two Patinos in the Big East.
Which means he and his dad will be going head-to-head.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. Yeah. Well, we should mention that although we were talking about the lack of Cinderellas, the NCAA says the ratings for their tournament have been the highest in 30 years. So I guess, despite the lack of Cinderellas, people like to see the big boys play, and the ratings are reflecting that. Anyway, I'm sure we'll be in front of our TVs this weekend.
Absolutely, yeah. And Kentucky finally gets a 7:30 game, which we're usually that 10:30, 11 o'clock game and playing after midnight. So looking forward to that as well.
Yeah. All right. Lawrence, I think it's helpful to mention that Keith Taylor, our sports editor, has done a great job of covering UK basketball. Of course, U of L is over with, but Russ Brown did covering that. People will find stories that Keith has done on Kentucky Today they're not going to find anywhere else.
You're exactly right. Kudos to Keith Taylor, our UK reporter, and Russ Brown, veteran journalist who covers U of L for us. So thanks for mentioning that, Chip. And thank you for joining us. For the latest, go to KentuckyToday.com. And for more on the Kentucky Baptist Convention, go to kybaptist.org. Lord willing, we'll see you next time on the Kentucky Today podcast.